Hello. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about Memorial Day and what it means to us. And it's a Memorial Day tribute. We did this. Did we do this last year? I don't know. We might have done this last year or the year before. It seems like everything got skipped a year for COVID. So, whatever. So, introducing our crack panel. Oh, God, I ended up. We have Daniel Flores,
Uber.
who flew the Apache, um, is the author. Oh, I told you I'd get it backwards. South of Heaven, My Year in Afghanistan, and then the movie Above the Best, which was really good. That was a really good,
Agreed.
good,
Thank you.
good documentary slash film. It's no longer Amazon Prime, right? It's moved on to something else now.
Free Amazon and
Okay,
several other
cool,
several other things.
cool. Well, welcome, and you're bringing the
Yeah.
Army perspective to us.
Yes.
The interview we had was awesome, and we learned a lot. Talked a little bit about mental health stuff, which eventually we'll come back and get to because that's been a big thing here. Also returning is Deuce. Hello, Deuce.
Hey, Mover.
I'll unmute you. What's going
Thanks for
on, man?
having me.
Deuce doesn't have any fancy books, but if you did write a book, it would be How to Not Be a Douche. Rule number 1: don't be a douche.
That's valid.
Yeah. Help your bros. Don't be a douche. So Deuce is here. He's a patchwearer type, flying the Mighty Viper, best jet in the history of all jets. And then also you're flying the Sky King Sky Bus now.
That's right.
So there's that. And joining us, as always, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mustang driver Wombat, who is the author of Treason Flight. So you've seen him on the channel before. So without further ado, today we're just going to talk about Memorial Day, what it means to us, stuff we think about. And since Wombat, you're already on the screen, I'm going to let you kick this off.
Wow, that's all putting me on the spot there. This is a tough weekend. I think it is for all of us. If you had told me 20 years ago when I started my career that this weekend would hold as much to me as it does now, I probably wouldn't believe you. Generations before, my dad and things like that, my uncles and stuff, they always seemed a little bit more somber for whatever reason, whether it was conscious or subconscious around this time. And now looking back on a 20-year career, I can understand why. This morning, it's been all weekend. It just kind of builds. I was talking to you guys before we started. I put a company on point for a comment they made on Instagram, wishing people a happy Memorial Day, which I think is about the most insensitive comment you can make, in my opinion. And then giving a discount, which I guess really shouldn't be applied, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion, which is why there's no discounts on any of my merchandise on Memorial Day. So there you go, for that reason. But it really, it kind of built itself to this morning. And when I woke up, it was the first thing that I thought about was a buddy I lost. And it just affects you differently. Like it's not, it doesn't bring you down. It just gives you a pause, I think, or at least that's the way I deal with it. Is it's just a pause. You look around, you appreciate what's around. My story, which, maybe I'll tell later or whatever, mover. It makes me realize that this one person and how they affected my life and ultimately their death and how it's laid out my life is very specific. And I appreciate everything I have because of what happened. And I'm not saying that, people that haven't lived our lives don't have that. Obviously people die all the time. There's just something about it when it's doing it for something bigger than yourself, I think. And I think that's where you'll see veterans kind of just handle this a little bit differently than losing loved ones other ways or friends other ways. That's my take on it.
Yeah. By the way, one of the things today, so this video is not monetized per se. It is a fundraiser though. So if you guys want to donate to a worthy cause, one that I support, Folds of Honor, It honors the legacies of those that are fallen and that made the ultimate sacrifice. So if you use the chat feature, I think there's a donate button. There's a donate button next to the thing, but it's educate their legacy. So children and spouses of fallen in combat or in the service of their country, they do educational scholarships. I think in the last couple of years, this channel's been able to raise almost $70,000 for that cause. So it's been a very, very good thing that I'm very proud of that we've been able to do. So anyway, with that said, today is about, like Wombat talked about, it's just about remembering those that have paid the ultimate price. You know, when you sign up for this job, you're writing a blank check to Uncle Sam up to and including your life. I mean, you are basically signing on that dotted line that, you know, this is, I will do whatever I can to defend my country, defend freedom. And if that includes, you know, laying down my life for it, so be it. So I thought we'd go around. If you want to talk about, you know, like Wombat did, or if you want to talk about those that you lost, you know, by all means, this is kind of a free hour to do that. For me, I always think about two people I lost back to back in 2008. Man, I hate, it's crazy that we're saying not 20, but 2008 because that was how long ago. But David Jinx Mitchell, friend of mine in the B course. We were both the token guard reserve bubbas flying the F-16 and had become friends because of that. Because usually in the F-16, you know, guard guys know where they're going, guard and reserve guys, and then active duty folks kind of still don't know where they rack and stack and where they're going to end up. And we lost Dave in a basic fighter maneuvers sortie, dogfighting. And that was in March of 2008. He left behind a wife and small child, and it was a very tough time. And it was one of those things that, you know, he was a good dude. I mean, there's no way else to put it. He was just a great guy that was, you know, one of the best friends you could ask for. And, you know, immediately B course is it's not a long course, but, you know, you start to make friendships there that'll last your entire career, your entire life. And, you know, he was just one of those guys. And it was tough. And it's tough even now, so long after that, to think about, you know, his wife and his son that he left behind. She was pregnant. She was pregnant with his son at the time. So, but you know, he paid that price. And I know, you know, it's not something we want to happen, but you know, he definitely sacrificed himself for our country. So the other, Bama Faulkner. Bama, I knew. He's also here. Blair Faulkner, Bama. 1 month later at Columbus, he was in a T-38 mishap. Had a, I think it was an aileron or a flap problem that basically on landing they ejected. It was an unsuccessful ejection attempt with the old seats, and he also had a wife and kids. And great guy. He was one of my mentors when I was at the Cajuns, the 706 Fighter Squadron, A-10s that originally hired me, and a guy I had kept in touch with even through training, even though I wasn't going to fly A-10s. But you know, he's former. I think he was a KC-135 nav prior to getting his Air Force wings as pilot wings, and then going and flying the A-10. Flew the A-10, and then when the unit closed, he decided to go fly T-38s. But another big loss because the guy he was larger than life. He had this big personality. He was somebody that everybody respected, everybody liked in the squadron. He was very funny. You know, for a young guy like me, you know, I showed up in the squadron, I was 20 years old, and you know, he took me under his wing and was just such a good mentor and such a good friend to me that you know, it's just very tough. So those were two. We talk about nickel in the grass. It's an old fighter pilot thing. You know, it's kind of a him thing. We did that before, but yeah, those are the two that immediately come to mind. And that's not the only two, but you know, for today, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. So because I think we do have some overlap, and that's why I want to turn this over to Deuce, who's got more than his fair share. I mean, you have a long enough career. Unfortunately, you just do. So Deuce, Over to you, bud.
Thanks, Mover. So I agree with what everyone has said, is that this is a very somber day. It's a day of remembrance, is the way that I look at it. So unfortunately, a long list of people that I remember on Memorial Day. So starting off at the top, when you and I were at Luke, we lost, didn't know him personally, but Trojan Gilbert was an F-16 pilot. He was in Iraq at the time and trying to do some good work and save some guys on the ground with a strafe run. So using the gun of the F-16 in order to take out the bad guys that were shooting at our guys, and unfortunately crashed. So that's the first name that starts on the list. The second name on the list was one of my friends from the B course. His name is Ice Houghton. Great American. Had a wife, Josie. After Luke, he went to Hill Air Force Base and was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. So obviously mountainous there at Hill, mountainous in Afghanistan. So they're doing some nighttime strafe. And unfortunately, the two biggest killers of F-16 pilots is spatial disorientation and Deuce loss of consciousness. And unfortunately, we lost Ice due to spatial disorientation at night. Also, while I was at Luke, I went through what's called the Block 50 course, because I went to Spangdahlem after Luke Air Force Base. We flew Block 50s, of course, doing the suppression of enemy air defenses. Missions a little bit different, so you go through a separate course, or at least you used to, there at Luke. And one of my instructors there was Bruiser Bryant, who was a great American. He was on a tour in Afghanistan where he was actually working on the ground with the Afghanis, and it's what's referred to as a green on blue incident, where in one of the what we thought was a friendly Afghan turned out not to be, and shot Bruiser and several other Americans that were working there. When I showed up to Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany, one of the individuals that I hadn't even met yet, but lent me his car already, was Dirk Ziegler. He was a really good American, like would literally give you the shirt off his own back. And, he was great fighter pilot, great instructor, great friend to everybody in the squadron. And unfortunately, what happened with Dirk was, of course, being a great American, he got picked up for weapons school. He was going through what we call a spin-up ride for that. So doing some BFM there at Nellis, and unfortunately, he experienced a Deuce loss of consciousness, and he wasn't able to recover from that. He left behind his wife and daughter, all great people. Dirk, of course, being a great American out there too. The next one on the list that I think about is Ben Chexmeyer, who you also got to meet, Moore. Met him at Spangdahlem, great fighter pilot. He and I had a pretty memorable mission there in Iraq that we could maybe talk about another time. That's a great picture of him and Ice. They were actually stationed together at Hill. But Chex went on to the F-35. And he was out doing some test stuff, and he was actually training, I believe, for a marathon. He was running, and he was accidentally struck by a car, which is what killed him, unfortunately. But left behind, of course, wife and kids as well. But I always think about Chex and his friendship. Next on my list is Captain Will Pyro Du Bois. First met Pyro at Kunsan Air Base. He was in the other squadron there. Great American, would always be the one that kind of lights up the room and gets everyone together, and he went on to Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina, and he was deployed during OIR, so counter ISIS mission there in the Middle East. And unfortunately, he experienced some spatial disorientation coming back to the field there, and unfortunately, he of course passed from that. But Pyro Du Bois is another one that I think about. The next name on the list is going to be Cajun Del Bagno. I didn't really know Cajun too closely, but I met him at Red Flag or two. He went on to be a Thunderbird pilot, was a great American, and was training up for the next season when he experienced a G-induced loss of consciousness, unfortunately, and passed from that. The next one on my list is Stephen Tripp Grace, who is a F-16 pilot that I served with at Shaw Air Force Base. Great guy, great American. Unfortunately, he had some health issues and was actually out running right before Thanksgiving one year, and experienced a heart attack, and unfortunately passed from there. Next name on my list is Richard Guns Guerin. He was one of my students when I was a flight commander in the Tomahawk, so teaching at the weapons school at Nellis Air Force Base. Great American, did well in the course, and he was a guard guy from McIntyre Air National Guard in South Carolina. Really great group of guys there. Got to know all of them really well. Unfortunately, Guns had some surgery that he had to have taken care of for his heart, and unfortunately, he got an infection from that surgery, and he passed. But I'll always remember having him in my flight and then teaching him there in the Tomahawks and seeing him grow into becoming a weapons officer at the end of the course. The last name on the list is Hawk Jones. So Rocky Hawk Jones was here in my squadron, currently in Wisconsin. And on December 8th, 2020, he was flying a mission from Alert. It was dark night, and unfortunately, Hawk experienced spatial disorientation, and he was not able to recover the aircraft. That one hits pretty close to home. So I was serving as the director of operations in the squadron at the time. And, Hawk is a great guy, or was a great guy. His wife, Kareen, and his sons, George and Roger, are both awesome. Actually just saw them earlier today at a ceremony over in Sun Prairie, but definitely thinking about Hawk today and every other name that I mentioned on the list. Great group of Americans that will not be forgotten. So thank you, Mover, for the opportunity. The other plug that I will say for Hawk is that for the Folds of Honor, right after Hawk passed, they came forward right away and just, taking care of his kids, all their education, it's already covered for life. So definitely a big pitch for donating to the Folds of Honor. Helps take care of families like Hawk's. So definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. And they actually, Bama's kids and eventually Jinx's kid or his son as well. So yeah, good point. Thanks, man. You've got every year your list just surprises me and it saddens me because that's a lot. It's a lot of heroes, dude. It's a lot, lot of good people. So cool. Daniel, a man that's seen a lot of up close and personal combat action. What do you got, man?
Wow, kind of like Wombat said. I mean, I never really thought about Memorial Day because it was never really personal. And all through high school, college, it was just another weekend to go to the beach and all that. Even when I was active duty and before the war, Memorial Day was like, yeah, okay, we'll remember everybody and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't obviously until I went to combat in Afghanistan in 2006. One of the things they told us when we got there was the two biggest killers of aircraft in Afghanistan was the weather and the terrain. And I was like, no way. But sure enough, that's what it was. Just kind of like what you said, Deuce. I mean, it was really wild that we had no Apaches knocked out of the sky in our rotation from enemy fire. And but we did lose two Apaches, and we lost one Chinook, and that was the first one in May of 2006, Colossal 3-1. Those guys, it was an accident. It's what starts off my movie, talking about it. And what hits me the hardest was the PIC, the pilot in command, Eric Totten. He was a former Ranger, infantry, kind of like I was infantry also. And so the first time I met him, which was only about 2 weeks before the accident, that we hit it off like long lost friends, kind of like in the infantry. It's everybody's a brother for life. Got along great. I just remember walking to pre-flight, and he'd be out there in his lawn chair getting a tan, and I was like, "Man, Eric, you're living the good life." And when they were all killed, and there was 10 of them, it was a punch to the gut, literally to the whole base. It shows the 6 there. The other 4 were with Colonel Fenty, who was on board the aircraft. He was the ground infantry commander that was with them. But it just, it's one of those deals you just can't fathom that it happened. It's kind of like, Christie in the movie says that everybody was in shock that it happened. And Memorial Day to me now, since the war, it's every day of the year. And I was thinking about that the other day. It's like every day I think about Colossal 3-1, Eric Totten, and Tim Flanagan, the CW3. He was the Apache pilot, and he was killed on July of 2006. I was home on R&R when Tim, when they crashed just north of, or just to the east of Kandahar. The base was just rocketed. They took off. Quick Reactionary Force took off at night, and they don't know why, but he drove it into the ground. We don't know why, and but his front seater survived. Actually, his front seater had 0 injuries whatsoever. But I think of Tim actually a whole lot. And just last week, one of the guys, Bob, that lives just south of Nashville, he sent me a picture of Flanagan's. There's a highway memorial sign there on the southwest side of Nashville, on the main highway there. And as Bob said, he was like, "Yeah, this really hit hard when he saw it." Same thing when he sent it to me on my phone. I was like, "Wow." I mean, even this, 16 years later, it still hits pretty hard. So he left a wife and 2 kids. From what I understand, she did not take it very well at all. Tim wanted to go to Afghanistan. I say all of us wanted to go, but apparently his wife was reluctant that he wanted to go, obviously because of the kids, I guess. But I think of him every day of the year. It's interesting that I wake up and doing my business, just whatever, and something will come up, and I'll say, "Oh wow, hey, Eric, Totten, or hey Tim, man, how's it going? Hope you're doing good," and all this, and just kind of talk to him, miss him. Tim was one of those guys that, when I first met him, he was with the Tennessee National Guard, and when we first time we met him was at Fort Hood when we were mobilizing, and he's literally one of those guys that you meet him, and after 15 minutes, you've got a friend for life, plain and simple. He was just a super, super nice, funny guy, and accomplished. He was an instructor pilot, a lot of time in the Apache, so that's why it hit really hard when he was killed in a crash. The other one I think about a lot actually is Sergeant Vile. I did not know Sergeant Vile until I saw my movie the first time. And General Tato was the one that told his story about Sergeant Vile. Sergeant Vile actually was on the ground in the Korengal outpost on the last battle in my movie. And on that whole battle, everybody was shooting at everybody. Everybody was getting shot at. But when we left, what I'd heard was that one person, that I'd killed over 10, and that only one person on our side was wounded. He got shot in the arm. And that's all I'd ever heard about it. And that was obviously back there in 2006. I don't know why this says 7, but so it wasn't until I saw the movie, the final cut, and General Tata started telling the story about Sergeant Vile in there, and I was like, wow, that guy's a badass. And he just starts talking about him, about how he was reacting and everything he was doing during the actual battle there in the Cornwall outpost. And I thought, man, that I want to meet him one day. And then right after that, obviously, he was killed in action in combat up in the Northeast, further north in 2009, up north of Naray. And yeah, that was a punch to the gut too. Since the film came out, I've gotten on Sergeant Vile's the Facebook page that his family set up for him, and a lot of them had a lot of strong emotions when they saw Sergeant Vile's segment in the film, and I do too. Still nowadays, when I do a movie screening, yeah, it still hurts to see, when Christie talks about the Colossal 3-1 crashing, and then about Sergeant Vile at the end of the film, and then I've got Flanagan's name at the end of the film. So it all, like I said, to me, it's every day of the year I think of all three of those guys, and it just came to light to me. I say earlier this year, just a month ago, when I had a reevaluation with the VA, that she asked me some question about that, and I was like, wow, you know what? I think literally every day. Actually, I know every day I think about those guys, and so that's what Memorial Day is to me. Is this is just another day that I remember all of them, a little more so today than other days, I guess.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it keeps their memory alive. I mean, that's what we do. We talk about them. We keep their memory alive. We honor, their legacy. We honor their sacrifice. Wombat, I'm going to bring it back to you, man. I don't know if you still got more to pontificate.
Sure. I'll talk about one. I mean, I don't want to go through a whole list, but there's one individual that I know when we remember people, it's somber. Obviously, we've lost our brothers and sisters, but there's one today, and it kind of hit me today, and that's the reason I want to talk about it. I've written about it before to pay tribute, but when I joined my E2 squadron back in 2004, 2005 timeframe, they were. I was lucky enough to be the new guy joining them in a port call in Australia, which probably leads to the call sign. That's about as much as I'll talk about my call sign. And they had just finished their first night in port in Perth. And here comes the new guy showing up at 8 a.m. So you guys could imagine how well received I was from a bunch of aviators that had been out to sea at combat for 3 months and finally got a port call.
Tell us about yourself.
A lot of that, yeah. They were probably a hair hungover, to say the least, from the shenanigans the night prior. And I show up after 48 hours of travel in only the finest way the Navy could get me from Norfolk, Virginia to Australia. And was just happy to be there. I mean, I was so excited, I mean, I think we're all that way, but like, it was my first squadron, this was my first thing. And most guys were giving me a hard time. And one guy walked downstairs. He was looking for a bottle of water. I'll never forget it. Cameron Hall, his call sign was Gazer. And he was just super nice. Yep. And everybody knows why his call sign was Gazer, because that's exactly what it was. He was our urine analysis coordinator for the squadron. So he got to watch people go to the bathroom. But he was such a nice guy, and there was something different about him. I mean, my squadron was great, and I loved every one of those guys and girls. But he genuinely cared, even at that point where you could tell they had been out the night prior. He cared, and he asked me, I'll never forget it. He walked up to me and he asked me where I was from, and he asked me if I needed anything. And it just kind of took me back a little bit. I was kind of surprised. Well, fast forward, Gazer went on and he became an instructor at the E2 RAG, and he was an NFO. He's a backseater. He was one of those backseaters that just would blow you away with being the funniest guy in the world in a social environment. But when he was in tactics, like he just turned it on, and it was just, it was such a level of professionalism that it almost, as a pilot, would take me back, because you would hear this. You're like, is that the same Gazer that was at the O Club last night? Like, it's so different, And well, he went on to the RAG to be an instructor, and I was at the time, and Mover, you and I have spoken about this. Everybody that watches this has heard my story, but I found out on one of my deployments I was getting a divorce, and I had a choice at that point. I had already picked up orders to go back and be a T-45 instructor in Kingsville, because that's where my now ex was Texas. So we were going back there, and then find out I'm getting a divorce, right? So obviously a lot of big things going on in my life. And my skipper at the time came to me and said, hey, the RAG wants you. They want you to be an instructor in the E2. And at that point, I was like, well, maybe I should, maybe I should just go do that. That's the right career path. And I was about to walk into my skipper's office and take those orders. And we got word that Greyhawk 620, which was one of the RAG birds, had crashed off a catapult shot doing carrier ops. And Gazer was in the back, and they didn't live. None of them lived. 10 seconds off the bow, they had the ADIs recess on them, and there's no chance. And they went in. And it was at that moment that I said, no, I'm going to stick with my orders. I'm not going there. There's something about that command, and there was, and things have come out, whatever. And that's not the point of the story. But there was something in that pivotal moment in my life where I'm like, nope, I'm sticking with what I'm doing. I'm going to Texas. And when I look back at that, I picked up a Hornet transition because of being a T-45 instructor, which I would have never gotten as an E2 pilot in the RAG. I got shipped to Lemoore, met my wife, had my son, all of these things that would have never happened if it wasn't for the sacrifice ultimately that Gazer and the rest of that crew made that night. And it really stuck with me this morning. I woke up, and my boy woke up, and we sat in front of the computer, and I showed him pictures, and he was like, who's that? And I was like, probably the most important person in your life that you'll never meet, but he was awesome. So to me, it just puts that spin on it, that how these people affect our lives in ways, and to pinpoint it on one thing like that, just, it blows me away to this day.
Dude, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's true. And I got an email earlier today, which is, I don't know if you guys saw, but a Canadian ace from World War II, Stocky Edwards, just died about a week ago, at 100 years old. So, it's not just, today. And you contrast that, so we also thank our allies, right? It's not just our service members, it's those that have fought next to us, which obviously, Canada has been our partner for a very, very long time. That, makes it kind of a big deal, and we're losing that generation and that history, because those guys, and, they went out and did the mission, they did the job, they did what they had to do. So it's very sad to see that. And then even today, the mishap report came out last week for Anthony Wentz, second lieutenant, November 19th, 2021, was killed in a T-38 landing mishap. And it's not something that's, this is not the first time. It's not the last time. As long as there are people that put the uniform on, we will be having these kind of conversations. We will be remembering, whether it's in training, whether it's in combat, whether it's, like Deuce was talking about, where it's just an unfortunate, something that happens medically. It's part of the business, and it's good to remember those folks and remember why we do this. So I switched us to the 4-person views. Guys, if you guys got anything, parting shots, want to talk about, want to throw in, please, by all means, the floor is yours. 2 of y'all are muted, so it's going to be tougher with the mute going. I know Deuce, he's the fighter pilot, never miss an opportunity to shut the hell up. So he's probably going to stay muted unless I force him out of the mute situation. But yeah, I don't know. Around the room, parting shots. Daniel, since you just unmuted yourself, I give you the floor.
I'm really glad you did this, Mover, because as long as we keep remembering all our friends, brothers, sisters that have been lost in combat, they'll never die. And we just got to keep this going. I know the families of those Flanagan's family, they appreciate it, and his friends actually. When I talked to one of his friends last year, because he asked me, "How do I know, Tim?" I should say, and I told him, about it, and he's like, "Wow, thanks for remembering, Flanagan and all." So we got to keep their names alive.
And that's a good point. I know this not just from losing friends, but having lost 2 parents when you're the immediate family member. The hardest part is not the immediate aftermath. It's the months and the years later, because immediately everybody rallies around you. Everybody's like, "Oh, are you okay? How do we do this?" It's the months and the years later where you're still hurting, the family members are still hurting, and people seem to have forgotten. So I think that's a great point. It's good to keep that, keep remembering their loved ones, keep remembering those that we've lost, and keep their legacy alive so that they're not forgotten, so that we still appreciate what they've done. So very good point. Deuce, you finally unmuted. What do you got?
No, just wanted to say thanks for putting this together, Mover. It's a great way to remember those that we've lost, and it's a really great kind of way to raise money for an organization like the Folds of Honor that really does make a difference for the families, for those that lose loved ones.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you've seen it. It's amazing that you've seen them at work, but it's terrible that you had to see it. When you and I talked about it originally, I talked to them, and they were so helpful and so willing to help to get in the fight and try to make things easier. But it's just a tough thing for them to even have to be there. You hate that that's a situation that you even have to utilize those resources. But it's good that they're there, and it's good that now that's one less thing they have to worry about. So, and thank you for the list. You've got it every year. I sit here and listen, and it hurts to see, all these good people that, their families are without right now. So, thank you. And Wombat.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. As always, I love coming on. It's a little bit different tone, obviously, but I think this is important because you give your viewers and the next generation that wants to do this job some really great insights on the other videos. But this shows both sides of it, and I think that's important to know what you're getting into. I would never change a thing that I've done in my career. It's been great. It ends in a day and a half now, and I don't regret any of it. And if I knew what I would carry around with me back when I signed up, I still would have done it. I said once that we all do it. We all carry the weight of our demons, if you will, with us from the things that we've seen and the people we've lost. It's just up to us whether you use that weight to build yourself up and make you stronger or to weigh you down. And I think you and this channel and Folds of Honor and everybody that comes on gives the viewers a real taste of that. And I think that's important, both in the legacy of the people that we've lost and also the next generation, so they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thanks for being on. Everybody watching, thanks for watching. Don't forget to donate if you can. Support Folds of Honor, support their mission. If you don't want to use the donate button, FOH.org, you can go straight to their website, make a contribution there. It's a worthy cause. So anyway, I hope everyone has a safe holiday. You know, take a moment, just remember, maybe in the comments, talk about somebody that, you know, you're thinking about today. And next time we'll be a little bit more upbeat, a lot of happier thoughts. So thanks again, everyone. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.